Hey everybody, good evening. Sorry for that little delay. I had a little Facebook mix hap, so I don't think anybody on Facebook's going to be watching the show tonight, live anyway. But welcome to the show. Back here, another week in front of us with plenty of fun programming and lots of good stuff to share. But I just saw that 24/7 Comics, which I think is Carl Choi under an assumed name, has just become a new member. So thank you for that, 24/7 Comics. I'd recognize that logo anywhere. But and I know I still owe you an email. I think I told you that about 7 days ago. I promise you I will email you this evening after the show. I'm not avoiding you. Has I don't know, Marcus, but we're going to find out if I've picked any of Brian's artworks. I can tell you that when I've looked at the selections that Brian made, I think many of these artists we've actually not ever mentioned their names on the channel before. So it will be interesting to find out. But Brian is in the green room, ready to go. Let me bring him into the show and get started. Hey Brian, how you doing, man?
Hello. Good. How are you?
Can't complain. It's been a very good productive day here at CAF HQ. So it's always fun for me to get to wind down the day with chatting with another collector. So I'm glad you've been in the chats for a while, and it's
Yeah.
long overdue to ask you to be in here and do an interview with me.
I guess. I mean, I'm happy to be here. I hope I have stuff that will interest people or something to say that'll interest people, but we'll see.
That's hey, one of the fun things is in doing these is getting to see artworks that maybe aren't the normal ones that Chris Snork or I would pick on a Thursday, or maybe aren't the ones that get the most comments on CAF. But you've certainly selected a group of pieces and creators that that I know we have definitely not talked about too much. So that'll be fun when we get to looking at the artwork, just to you know talk about why these pieces are important to you. But tell me a bit about yourself. I mean, chatted just briefly in the green room beforehand, but how long have you been collecting OA?
So, I didn't start out in comic art. I started out so my mom, I should back up a little bit. My mom's an artist. I don't know if you can see the CDs behind me, but I've been a collector of things my entire life. And so, now it's mostly just art and music that I collect these days.
Hmm.
Um, but so original art wise, I started out doing just published art in general. I had some book illustrations and things like that. I moved pretty quickly into animation art. And then from there, I went into comic art. Although there was kind of a mix, sort of throughout. There wasn't any period of time where I was exclusively a particular kind of art.
Hmm.
Um, I started going to, comic conventions in like college, and once I saw that there was original art of various kinds available, it blew my mind and I was like, "Oh, you can actually purchase this stuff." Are you kidding? So, you know, from there that was it. So,
But you said you started in illustration and animation art. So what was the attraction there? That even got you started picking up original artworks of any kind.
uh s- again, I think it kind of goes back to um my family having some artists in it, my mom in particular, and um just being sort of a collector in general. And also, early, as a kid I collected a lot of things that were made to be collected, like the things that they, the trading cards, the various video games was a big thing for a while for me, and that kind of thing. But I got really tired of spending money into things that, as I got a little older, I was just like, okay, it's literally just made for people who have the compulsion like I do to collect things.
Hmm.
And and when I started realizing that there was affordable original art out there, I was like, it was a real shift to be like, wait, I can just own not only this thing that a piece of this thing that I love, but also it's the only one. You know, it's not made to for it's not made just for the collector community. It's not made, to be a special edition or something like that, which I can't blame people for collecting that kind of thing. But
Mhm.
for me, it became much more about like just owning a piece of something that I loved, and could be the owner of and the only owner of, you know.
I definitely get that. It's funny, when I started collecting, I didn't think about like the uniqueness of it. Like it's the only piece. I did collect, I collected comics and I don't know if I really got in. I got into sports cards when I was still in high school or maybe even like middle school and stuff. But the uniqueness of it didn't really hit me until a few years after I was collecting it. I was just it was just something new, and I didn't really think about I'm the only one that has this piece of art. It didn't really occur to me, but now it does. I mean, I think about that, and it isn't a motivating factor necessarily when I'm picking something up to be like, oh, it's mine. I get to covet it, but it's a cool part of our hobby that I think I I did not collect the flip, Marcus. But it's one of those driving factors in the hobby that makes it wonderful, especially when you're commissioning artists and you're basically creating a piece of art that no one else can own. And yeah, there's just so many facets to comic card collecting and narrative art collecting that's fun, unique, and keeps it interesting. Thanks for the golf flags there, Marcus. Is this stuff going to be from his personal collection? Yeah, we're going to look at stuff from Brian's personal collection, definitely. So, Brian, back to I'm kind of curious. Animation art. What
Yeah,
kind of pieces did you pick?
yeah.
Did you pick up, and where were you buying those?
So the first bit of it that I bought at a convention. What's funny is that I wasn't even a fan of the show that I bought animation art from originally, which was Ren and Stimpy. I don't know if you remember Ren and Stimpy, if
I
that was
do.
something that you ever came across. And I didn't hate the show, but it wasn't like a favorite show of mine. But there was one of the original producers for the show had some drawings, original sketches from the show at a convention, and I was walking by the table and I was like, wait a minute, are these actually, were they used in the show? And he goes, oh yeah. And I go, again, it was just that realization that like you can buy these things. I had to buy one even though it wasn't my favorite show, growing up. Just the fact that it was there in front of me, and I mean, it was very inexpensive. This was
Hmm.
quite a few years ago, and even today, an animation drawing is going to fetch far less most of the time, depending on what it is, than like your average piece of comic art. Um, but it was sort of a no-brainer, and I remember going back to my hotel room at the convention, and I pulled up eBay, and there was a whole section of animation art that I'd never noticed, never even realized was there. And I think I probably spent more money on eBay at the convention that year than I spent at the convention just buying up pieces of my childhood basically.
So yeah, well,
So
that's cool. I mean, I think that
yeah.
when I first started collecting too, I don't think I ever looked at the original art side of eBay either. But after that first con, it's like, all of a sudden you realize, wow, you can actually buy this at places that just as simple as that. And I think that back in the early 2000s, I mean, that's where a lot of us were picking up our original art.
Yep.
But
Yep. And that would have been, sorry, go ahead. Go
no,
ahead.
no, 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 please finish.
I was just going to say I would have probably been starting this out. I entered college in the mid 2000s. So that would have been right around the time that I bought my first piece of like,
Hmm.
comic art or original art in general, sort of right around there. Yeah.
So you've only been collecting for about 20 years roughly, or what number would you put on it?
Yeah, I mean, probably from 2005, 2006. So
Hmm.
almost 20 years now. Yeah. So Yep. And as far as what else, animation art wise, I've collected, I mean, sure, I'm certain stuff that people have heard of. I mean, directly behind me, you can't really see it. There's a background from The Secret of Nim, that's up there. That was one of my favorite animated films. And it's not on my CAF because I haven't really put much animation art up on CAF, but I still have. I've sold off a little bit of that collection to fund purchases. I'm sure other people know what that's like, but um, but I still have a significant number of pieces of animation art. I just haven't. I was late coming to CAF, and so I have a backlog of a lot. If I was to include non-comic art, in the stuff that I was uploading, so I prioritize the comic art specifically onto CAF, and then maybe one day I will I will make it into the other stuff to upload there too.
Well, there definitely isn't a lot of animation art on the site, but we encourage it. Yeah, I have a few pieces, mostly more. Well, I think almost most of my stuff is X-Men related, but at the end of the day, I'd like to see more of it up there, just like I'd like to see more illustration art posted to CAF, of course. But here, and we've mentioned
Yeah.
your CAF gallery a few times, and I always wanted to share the link to your CAF gallery so that everybody can check out your personal collection of artwork. There's a few jokes that go around here, and everybody thinks I take it seriously. But at any rate, there's the link. It's in the chat. I put it in there for those of you on YouTube because I think we're not streaming to Facebook right now. But check out the CAF gallery while we're talking, and you'll be able to see some of the pieces. I think you feature some of the pieces we're going to look at today in your CAF.
Yeah, I tried to vary it a little bit, but there's definitely some stuff on the featured page that will appear, in this. So
Very
yeah.
good. So you said you came to CAF late. So when you started collecting OA, were you, did you know other people who were collecting comic art and animation art, or was it something
I
a
I
solo
really didn't.
venture? Yeah.
Yeah, I really didn't. Um, I knew I had lots of friends that thought it was interesting, but nobody else who also collected. Um, I have a I have a set group that I go to conventions with a lot of the years that we go, and I generally get made fun of as the guy that comes back. Oh, Brian brought more art. Like it's just I've got a stack of art that grows every convention, and then I have to figure out how to fit it into luggage if I'm having to fly back to wherever I'm going. Um, so it's not something that I've had a big community around. I have been part of some online communities for the animation art before I came to CAF, and but none of those groups were ever interested in hearing about comic art. So it was especially the comic art piece until I really started participating on CAF was a very solo thing for me.
So you weren't able to, convince your friends that comic art collecting or animation art was a worthy endeavor.
No, I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with them, or maybe what's wrong with me, but it's,
Well, I was
but
hoping you might give me
they
the,
never.
the secret sauce on how to, change a friend or two into being interested in comic art, because that's always been, you can imagine that's like the mission of CAF and what we do here on the channel, talking about original art. But it's funny, it is for those of us who collect it, the moment you pick up that first piece or it just clicks, you can't think of anything else. But it's like, how do you get to that point? Where you make that conversion from picking up comics or Funko Pops or whatever it is that you're most, entertainers, signatures. I don't know, what, whatever those things are, and then switch over to something a little bit different and tangible.
Yeah, I think that's probably part of it, is that if I really think about it, I don't have any close friends who are really big collectors of anything.
Mm.
And so they don't really have that bug, to go out there and grab some other stuff. So It's it maybe that's a good thing. I feel like I would be in a worse financial position these days if like
You hit
I had that
enablers.
feedback loop of the friends.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's I totally get that. I mean, I've been kind of nudged along on making some purchases here or there, thanks to friends I have, and I don't regret them. You know, those instances where I picked up a piece of art, but yeah, this hobby is one where, it's something that we see a lot, right? Just kind of encouraging people to take the plunge, pick up something different. But and God Loves Comics is making a joke about animation snobs, but is it true, like whatever forum or site you were participating in where they were actually sharing and talking about collecting animation cells and backgrounds, they really couldn't see the value in picking up something different?
So I will actually amend what I said before to be specifically friends in, like in real life, friends,
Mhm.
because there in the animation circles, there's definitely more people in that circle, just like there is on CAF, that like CAF, like people like to focus on comic art, probably there's fewer people interested in animation art. And the same I think goes the other way. But I will say that I mentioned the what are they called? The random sketches for Comic Art Live. I don't know why the term is
Mystery
escaping
sketches.
me right now. Mystery sketches, thank you. I mentioned the mystery sketches in for the last Comic Art Live
Mhm.
in the chat, the animation art chat that I'm in, and I know that I got, I think, at least 3 to 5 people to buy. One person bought like multiple, and he hit pay dirt. He got some really amazing stuff,
Wow.
and so I think that there's more interest in that now, um, in part because they can request the animation characters to be done by a comic artist, and so they get this new interpretation of a character that they already like,
Mhm.
even if it's not a comic character, um and so anyway, so yeah, I'm trying to do my part. But it's
Well, clearly
and I
hey, I love the idea of promoting it into different groups that aren't specifically collecting or original art. I mean, if it worked, even if it generated 5 or 6 sales, just to get them exposed to it, because it's not like it's a far leap from animation art to comic book artwork. Only in because so often the characters cross over. You would think that if you love well, Ren and Stimpy. I mean, there are comic book pages that they could buy as well. So, I think most animated characters are going to be in some book form one way or another. But Marcus is commenting that the animation is it's speaking to you and you don't have to read anything. So it is a different medium, and maybe it's a different attachment. You're more. Do you find animation art collectors to be more appreciative of the films or the shows that the animation art comes from versus just the appeal of owning a cell?
I'm not sure what you're going for there, like what you mean. So they can you
Well, I mean,
I'm not sure what you
do
mean.
they like owning the
Go
cell
ahead.
because of specifically because of the show that it came from? And so maybe they're more fans of the show than they are of even collecting
Ah.
the animated cells, I guess is what I was getting at.
Yeah, I would say it's pretty rare to get somebody who's just buying cells or things from stuff that they've never seen before. Although I have, if you see something that you really love just from an art perspective, people that are into original art, whether it's animation or comic, I think will be, if it's affordable, they might jump on it. But I would say for the most part, people in the animation art world are buying the cells or the sketches from the stuff that they love, that they watched, that they or are watching, that kind of thing. But of course, now none of that stuff is made with cells.
Hmm.
And so a lot of the collectors are collecting things that are from, shows that are 10, 15, 20 or more, years old. Um, Also, cells in particular are much more fragile, much more prone to degradation over time. And so that was part of the reason why I started shying away from the animation art, is because I'm very particular about trying to keep my collections nice, and in good shape. And an animation cell is going to deteriorate no matter what you do. It will slowly degrade. So,
Exactly. Yeah, we've talked about cells. I mean, I have some where, I bought them for the kids a long time ago, like My Little Pony cells, and they're stuck to the paper behind it. They just have so many issues that you're right. I mean, they're a difficult thing to collect and keep perfect, and they can't keep perfect.
yeah.
Like these paint hardens, can flake, you name it. There's a lot of different issues there, but it does sound like those collectors are more on the nostalgic side versus collecting them as like an art form. I mean, in a weird way. There's nothing wrong with that. We all collect for different reasons, but an animation art collector may not be a fan of art in as much as they're a fan of the thing that the art was used for. So I don't know. I never really thought about it like that before.
No, I hadn't really thought about it either, but it's definitely, I would say that you're probably right for the most part. Yeah.
Cells are overrated, says Rich Danny's. He's worked in animation a little bit. And he said that most animators are into comic art. And I believe that. Absolutely. And Delight loves movies. I think those were all CDs behind you. Is that correct?
That is correct. They are all CDs behind me.
Not one graphic novel in the bunch. Delight loves movies. All CDs.
Yeah.
Stingray says you got to save money for magic art. I don't know. Have you collected magic art before? I know you've been to IX.
So not Magic the character. Are you talking about Magic the Gathering, like
I'm
the
still, yes,
game,
yes, that's what I
or?
thought Stingray was getting at. But he's talking to Carl anyway.
So
Sorry. But tell me about that because you were at
that's okay.
IX last year.
I was, yeah, we met there, and
Hmm.
I I'm a big fan. So I played Magic the Gathering when I was young. Love the art from it. And I love, fantasy art and that kind of thing in general is great. Fantasy, science fiction, all of it. Uh, I have some pieces, myself of various kinds, but I've never purchased a published piece of like Magic the Gathering art specifically. No. I don't think there's one that's come up that's both been in my price bracket and something that I wanted bad enough to get, if that makes
Hmm.
any sense. Not one I've run across anyway. Um, but maybe one day. Maybe one day, definitely.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think I only have one published piece of Magic the Gathering art, and I bought it at the first IX I went to. And I've never played Magic the Gathering. It was just a nice piece of art that Ralph Horsley had in his booth, and it might only been like $500. It might have been less than that. But it's back to I've always loved illustration art, and it was just a cool image, and it was from an artist whose work I'd seen before and I liked, and I wanted to walk away with something from him, and so I picked a Magic card.
Yeah. Well, and my collection is definitely, built on a budget, like
Mhm.
I I'm not saying that I haven't spent hundreds of dollars on a piece of art, but I've never spent thousands of dollars on a single piece of art. It's just never happened. So, both because I have enough things that are on my want list that are less than that I, don't need to sort of, break that ceiling quite yet. But
Sure.
also it's just, you know, if I love something that's, $500 and I can have two things that are $500, do I buy the two things that I love that are $500, or do I save up for the thing that I love equally that's $1,000? Like that's, sort of the the question.
Well, we all wrestle with that, to whatever degree our budgets are. But I get that totally. Did you what did you pick up at IX? Because I don't remember. I actually only picked up one thing when I was there, but I usually get a lot more than that. How did you do?
So I also only picked up one thing, and my wife and I went together because we've been looking for art to just put up in the house
Hmm.
generally. And she's not a fan of comic art necessarily, but she does like a lot of the fantasy stuff and whatnot. So it was really fun to go and browse. We ended up not getting anything sort of a mutual piece, but when I was there in the evening by myself, I bought a prelim. He said it was a prelim drawing, and I did see the painting that it was then he created from it. I'm forgetting the name of the artist off the top of my head. It's actually featured on my CAF gallery. Um, it's a sort of a mushroom character. It wasn't for anything. It was published in the IX book that they put out every year.
Hmm.
Um, but it's the pencil drawing kind of in the uh, lower left corner, I think. I'm not actually looking at my CAF gallery at the moment, so I'm doing this from memory. But yeah, so that's the painting that somebody else purchased, and I purchased the pencil drawing. I tend to be much more of a fan of black and white, grayscale or ink,
Hmm.
than of color. Um, but I will buy paintings or color things as well. But this really drew me in. I loved the detail. I mean, this is a prelim drawing, but the detail on the hands, just the whole thing is fantastic in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with who was the artist? Brendan Lancaster. I'm sure I saw their table, but I don't remember talking to them. But that's one of the fun
Yeah,
things that I think about going to IX is that there's something for every budget, and there's a lot of artists that bring pieces like that along with the finished painting. And
yeah,
but a lot of times, they really do some really detailed prelims, just like that piece was. And I've bought
yeah,
many, because typically when I go there, I do like to get like 8 to 10 things. So I bought uh, like two or three pencil pieces that were prelims to something that might have been for a game, or was this a prelim to a painting or something, because they're they put a lot of effort into them.
yeah. Well, and that one's large too. A lot of times prelim drawings are quite small.
Hmm.
But if I remember right, that's almost the size of a full piece of 11 by 17 comic art. It's not quite the same aspect ratio, but it's quite big. So, for what I paid and for what, I think the painting was 2,500 or $3,000, and I paid a teeny tiny fraction of that for a piece of art that I'm very happy with. So
Yeah. No, I completely get that. There's a couple of people who I almost like their prelims over the finished pieces for some reason, and that's probably not what they want to hear. But um, one of the artists that goes to IX, I swear the next time I see them there, I'll have to buy something because I've passed it up so many times. But Quentin Clean, I just love his stuff. It's just so polished but ethereal, and but I love his rough work a little bit more than I like the finished ones, and I don't know why. There's just an appeal to them that I see him and I'm like, I got to come back to his table and buy something. And I've thought that the last two times I've seen him, and I haven't pulled the trigger once yet. So I've got to fix that.
yeah. Well, and not to harp too much on the animation art stuff, but I've sort of left that collecting, behind for the most part. I've
Hmm.
bought a few things recently, but not so much. But sort of late in when I was collecting a lot of it, I moved to the area of it where it's like prelims uh, or sort of test stuff, the test paintings, the color tests and that kind of things that they would
Sure.
do, because I often found that they were more detailed than what would end up being animated, um and just very small. They would be quite small, but very detailed pieces of work. So
No, I agree. I wouldn't mind
concept art,
having
that's the
a
word I
pr
was trying to find.
right, right. No, I wouldn't mind having a prelim or two from Frank Frazetta. There's nothing wrong with that. So I totally get it. I think that there's when you can't afford the original finished piece, those stuff like that is just as good. And again, when you see an artist whose work you like, just being able to pick up something and take it away, I think is always a good thing. I mean, there's several artists I've seen at IX that I just felt that way. Like I can't afford the big stuff, but I wanna have a piece by them. And I picked up a few sculptures over the years from people there, and they've always been small, but it's like as long as I can walk away with something. Um,
Yeah.
Colin and Christine Poole used to exhibit there all the time. I think they missed the last couple of years, but they always brought big statues, could never afford one. But one year they brought these small cast skulls, which but they were awesome. They were they'd have wings on their heads, or they'd have a hat, or they'd whatever, horns. And and everybody wanted one, because nobody could afford a 3 foot cast statue, but you could pick up these smaller cast pieces that were just as fun. And so I picked up two of them because I'd always wanted to buy something from them. And
Yeah,
it was
I'm friends. Sorry, go ahead.
I was good. The only other I was trying to think of the other artist. Scott Murphy is a guy whose work I always liked, and I've never been able to pick up one of his paintings, but I've picked up a couple prelims from him. Same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm friends with an artist who has exhibited in IX a few times, and named Amy Ashbaugh. Um, and she was in I forget the way they separated out, but she was in the show that happens all week. The sort of the big show,
Right, the main gallery
and
show. Yeah,
the main gallery show. But then w- I I went with her and her partner through the late show, so the Saturday evening show,
the
and
showcase. Yeah,
we happened across the showcase. I'm so sorry. But we happened upon an artist who I cannot remember the name of now, but she does like these micro paintings on the backs of pennies, um,
didn't see that.
and they're hugely detailed, and she actually has magnifying glasses at her table over these pennies so that you can actually see all of the detail in them. And my friend Amy, what she said to her is, it must be amazing for you to be able to take these to conventions, because you have to like carry so little with you because all of your art is so small. And she said, yeah, my whole table fits in a backpack. So
Everybody's so jealous that that's all she needs to bring with her is that.
exactly. Yeah.
She should buy one of those, or rent one of those, like, stamping machines. She could flatten them out and have do something with that, and then paint on that.
She actually does part of it is etching as well. She'll do etching into it to add detail, etch into the copper of the penny, and then paint and that kind of thing. So
So IX is gonna be a regular show for you then, right?
definitely, yeah. Now that we sort of live in central PA area, I mean, it's a
Mhm.
no brainer. It's close enough to be something that I can go to without getting a hotel room, and or something that we can go to. I should say. I say I because I would go to all the days of it, whereas my wife, she would probably be happy with just going through on a Saturday.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I've taken one of my daughters with me one time to it, and I don't think Maureen was there one time. I don't remember why. But it is a good show for that. I mean, if they're always doing demos and things. And again, we talked in the green room. I think IX is a very special show that I think anybody who's into original art collecting should at least check out once, because it's a lot like a trade show in a weird way for artists. It's something that I can't say that is the style of the show is unlike any other show I can that I can compare it to. It's just very unique, but but it's like a family. They actually do have a karaoke night that they do there on Saturday evenings, or is it Friday evenings? I can't remember, but literally they pack. There's a theater inside of the Goggle Works building, and they just after the show's over, they everybody goes out for dinner, has a few drinks, and then comes back, and they pack this theater and belt out tunes for a couple hours. So it's different. It's very, very different.
It's
Stingray will go to IX for the karaoke. Well, we've threatened to have comic art karaoke sometime. I don't know if it'll happen at OAX or not, but yeah, everybody needs a little bit of karaoke and to just have a different experience once or twice. So
you could pair it with the bub crawl. You could bub crawl to the
a
karaoke
place where you
bar,
can do the
you know,
karaoke.
and
Yeah,
then
it finishes with karaoke after everybody's been drinking. That might be interesting.
exactly.
Or it might be some moments nobody wants on camera, but yeah, that might be how we work it out. But uh, yeah, the bug crawl was interesting. It was fun. I only really hit the first place because it was so cold down here when we did that. But there you go. Matt says he's calling dibs on Wanted Dead or Alive. Yeah, that'll be a fun one. Oh man. All right. And Stingray apparently has a shitty little karaoke machine, so he will bring it with him to OAX next year. All right. We number one Marvel fan says we need a DJ. We may work that out in year two. You never know. Lots of things to talk about already. God loves comics. That would be a good one. Who could we get? Who are the 5 people that we can get to sing Black Sabbath's Iron Man? That would be interesting. Oh man. But so yeah, that's so that the thing is now, we haven't really like IX is a little different than a lot of other shows, but you've hung out in the chat, so you've seen a lot of the names before, and you've been on CAF long enough to you've got to at least recognize names and whatnot. And at least their avatars on CAF. Um, so that's a start, right? That's a start. But I mean, as far as shows, have you gone to any shows that are kind of art focused? I mean, although you're in Central PA, have you ever gone to like Comic Art Con, for instance, in Jersey?
No. So I mentioned in the green room, we've only lived here for a little less than, or we only lived here about for a couple of years. Before that, we were in Texas, and there were surprisingly few cons in Texas that I really was dying to go to.
Hmm.
Now I might have missed some, you know what I mean? I missed hearing about them or something like that. But when it's funny when you're in Texas, we lived in Austin, which is of course like near central Texas. Um, it's like 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours to get out of the state or even to another like major city. Like Dallas is 3 hours and Houston's 2.5. So unless it's happening sort of in Austin, there's not really a lot you can like drive to and go to a lot of the time. So when we moved, we actually targeted an area that was a good driving distance from a lot of major cities. So getting to various areas like Baltimore or even DC, New York, uh, obviously Philly, New Jersey, areas of New Jersey, that kind of thing. And so this past year, obviously, I went to IX. I also went to SPX for the first time
Sure.
this past year, which was great. Um, and but mostly I've gone to cons like so. I was when I went to college, I was in Florida. I went to MegaCon. Was like my very first con, but it was back when MegaCon was all held in like one large room. Like
Right. Good show
it
back
was
then.
not very big.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and then really the annual convention that some friends of mine and I try to go to almost every year is Dragon Con. But that's not super art focused. There are a lot of artists there. There's a whole floor of comic artists. And I do hang out on that floor a lot while I'm there. And that was where I actually did meet, some other collectors. I wouldn't call them friends or even acquaintances, but I do say hi to them, every year when I go to Dragon Con. Um, I'm sure many, if not most of them, have CAF accounts.
Hmm.
Um, but they always have sort of a show and tell of comic art at Dragon Con where there's a couple of guys behind a booth, and you can look through their portfolios of just these absolutely amazing art. And so I always go over there and drool over the stuff that is, far beyond my ability to purchase. So,
No, I get it. I've actually never been to Dragon Con. Uh, I want to experience it once, but it just never kind of I never have the time. But I will make it there one time. But I get you
it's
living in
it's
Texas though. Texas is huge. Florida's the same. I live in Central Florida, and it takes, if you want to go to other than Orlando, everything's a 3 hour drive, so or more. Miami's, I don't even think, I think Miami's like 4 hours from where I'm at, right? So no, you don't get out too often. But like you were saying, back in the early 2000s or so, I mean, that was MegaCon was a fun show. It was smaller. They always had a lot of artists. Well, a lot of local artists were there, but it was a good enough show that I flew down with my son through like at least 2 years in a row, and if not three, because it was just, it was a very accessible and fun show that felt focused on comics. So yeah, I enjoyed it. And then you get to go to the parks for a day or something before or after. But uh, yeah, so we should look at some artwork. We're, I think
yeah.
you got 18 pieces selected, like I asked for. And that is not true, Marcus. Do not do that. Dragon Con has been a show. So, all right, why don't we take a look at the pieces here? And again, I think that there's a lot of, I wouldn't say there's enough artists here that I'm sort of familiar with some, and then there's others I'm completely. I saw the names because I looked over at your gallery and I'm like, boy, yeah, I've got a lot to learn tonight. So why don't we start off with this the first piece, and the
So
artist is.
I
Tell us who the artist is, because I'm not familiar with the artist's name. Brock Hoare.
Yes, yeah, Brock Hor, Hor, uh, is his name. And this, I wanted to start out with this because I don't know if this will be very interesting to many other people, but this is like a top grail purchase for me, because this was the very first comic book that I can remember reading as a kid. Um, it was gifted to me by a neighbor, and it's Adventures of Superman annual number 6. It's like the number one featured thing on my CAF gallery if you wanted to see it better. Um, but as soon as I joined CAF, as soon as I realized that it was a thing, I searched for pages from this. Um, and so I found that the cover is on CAF, but the cover was done by Mignola, funny enough. And I love Mignola, but I knew that when I saw that, and that it was, of course, already owned by somebody on CAF, I've never even bothered messaging them about it because I knew that it was outside my my ability to offer a fair price. There was one other page from the book on CAF. It had changed hands between two people on CAF right before I joined. Um, and I did message the new owner about it, but I never received a message back. So they still have it as far as I know, and I'm happy that they have it and they're happy with it. But for years, I looked for available pages from this book. Um, you like you said, you don't recognize the artist's name. Well, he didn't have a very long career in comics. I was able to track him down, and I emailed him, and he was kind enough to I told him that this was the very first book that I read as a kid, one of my favorites. Obviously, a lot of nostalgia around it. And he told me he received half the book, half the art from the book after it was done. But he was in college when he did this at the School of Visual Arts, um, and he it was his very first assignment, the very first comic he ever did. um, and he in order to graduate from from college, he had to say no to, it's a two-part story, there's two comics in it. And he had to say no to the second part, because he wouldn't have been able to graduate and get that work done. So the second part of the story is done by a completely different artist. And uh, I actually really, I didn't read the second part of it until I was an adult. And I actually really don't like where the story went. So I really just kind of read this issue as its own standalone thing. um,
But that's cool. He's,
but he's
you reached out to the create. Now, when did you buy this? How long ago did you add it to your collection?
literally this year.
Okay,
Um, this was, or not, I'm sorry, not 22, this past year, 2024.
but still, that
Um,
means that the
and
artist held on to this thing for 30 years.
Well, he said that he's never sold a page. He's
Ah,
only ever given them away to friends and family. He's kept a sequence from the book itself for himself, and then he had a very small handful of pages left that I think he both hadn't given away and was willing to part with. And he sent me pictures of all of what he had left, and he let me pick one. And I mean, I paid him, but like he let me buy one from him when he'd never sold one before. And that meant a lot. Like I was it was I'm very, very thankful to him, for allowing me to buy this page. So um I will say, he did a few other books, for some smaller companies. I don't know if he actually did much or anything for DC again after this. He also said, because the character designs for the cover, or I'm sorry, the character designs in general, were something that he came up with himself. And he had no idea that Mignola was going to do the cover. And he said seeing his character designs interpreted by Magnola was like one of the highlights of his career. So
oh, that's funny. Well, you're right. I just did a search on CAF. There's only 7 pieces of art by Brock on CAF, and you have 5 of them. So, uh,
yes.
and the professor Derek Crabb has one, and someone named Donald Munsell has the other. I assume that's the other page that you were mentioning earlier.
I'm sure it is. Yeah. And the reason I have 4 or 3 more pages now is that it went so well finding Brockhor's email and emailing him. He said, of course, the inker had Kurt Schultz had the other half of the book. And so I immediately started looking for how to contact Kurt Schultz. And he also he had a little bit of a longer career in comics, but is no longer in comics. And he told me he did reach back out after I emailed him, found his email, emailed him. And he told me that this was only his second project. So between the artist and the inker, this was only the second or first book that they ever did. um, and he had 3 pages left, and he let me purchase all of them. So I have 4 pages, from the first comic book that I ever read, and and
That's
and
crazy.
uh, Brock Brock was nice enough to do. He asked me when he before he sent it out. He said, Which was your favorite character design from the book?" And I told him Green Lantern, and so he did basically a con drawing, of his character for me, of the Green Lantern from that book, and that's one of the other pieces that you see on CAF. So
Ah, that's right there.
yeah.
Well, that was nice of him. But what a rare thing. Because a lot of people try to get a page or something from the first comic they ever bought or the first one they ever remember reading. But the idea that 30 years later, both pencil and ink or still had pages from the book that you wanted, and you were smart enough to go out and dig around and get their contact information, and that's where you got the pieces from. I mean, I can say that that is definitely not a story I've heard before in almost 5 years of doing collector interviews. So that's fun. And it's
Yep.
and a very nice,
And
I mean, clearly he's still got some talent here because this is a nice piece.
yeah, he's an art teacher now.
Oh, cool.
So that's yeah. So
Very nice.
I was thrilled. Still, like, it was the I could buy no other comic art for. I of course will buy more comic art, but I could buy no more, and I would still be so happy because of these, pieces. And I'm sure they wouldn't mean nearly as much to most other people, but they mean a lot to me. So
Hmm.
it was really really nice to find them. Although looking back at that book, probably not something that like a 6 to 8 year old, probably 8 year old should have had at the time.
Hmm.
It's very very violent. Like Green Lantern is literally nailed to a cross with his own arrows in one scene of that book. So
Yeah, that's the right
it's
book for your first one. Something
yeah.
filled with a lot of gruesome components. So what was this?
Yeah.
Barry asked, there's a question from the audience. I can't answer, but just wondering if you've dealt with smoke or sun damage with original art. Just wondering if you guys would have a way to kind of deal with it. Uh, sun damage usually, if it's ink or pencil, will do, just remove it. So there's nothing you can really do about that over time, depending on how it's inked as well. The sun can fade your inks or markers for sure, depending, again, back definitely markers. But smoke damage, I don't know. I mean, you would have to take it to a conservationist at that point to see if there's anything that could be done with it. Because if it darkened the art, yeah, it's going to be, yeah, it's probably not impossible. And there's a few, we've talked to several conservationists before. They're out there, and ironically, there's probably one like in any city around you. There's people who will repair damaged paper and whatnot. So dig around. I'm not recommending anybody who has who had a challenge on January 6th a few years back, Marcus, but yeah, and like Matt says, re-inking is a way to fix some sun damage, but usually not something you'd see anybody really tackle. I have one piece of art that has definitely faded, and I'm just going to leave it as it is. I would never hang it up on a wall or anything. I mean, you just have to. Uh, if you like it, you keep it, and yeah, but there's not a lot you can do with things that have been damaged by sunlight.
Well, and fair warning to anybody who hangs art up that purchases the full UV museum glass. If you hang that in the sun, you're still going to end up with sun damage eventually. It'll be more protected, but I actually I know somebody who had a double frame, and one half of it was in the sun fairly frequently. And they unframed it, and you can see the difference one side to the other of like how faded one of the pieces is versus the other, just because that one wasn't in the sun very much. So
Hmm. Yeah, I think, well, half the pieces on the wall behind me are penciled. So I try to. I don't know. I've never really invested in museum glass on for frames. I have a few pieces like that, but it's kind of expensive, so I don't hang a lot of artwork. Most of the stuff back there is for fun. Can I recommend a good frame shop in Central Florida? No, Daniel, I can't. Casper might have worked with some frame shops around here, but I don't know if he has either. He probably framed most of his artwork before he came to Central Florida. I haven't worked with anybody since I got here, though. I actually do have a card around here somewhere. I'll have to look around. Maybe by the CAF update I can find it and let you know, because I was told of somebody who's in Orlando that actually works with the museum and a few other places that is supposed to be a fantastic local framer. So I'll let you know. But back to the interview, Brian. So let's see. Second piece of art. Well, this is Dick Giordano, so we know that name around here.
Yeah. It's Dick Giordano, but it is in Wanted, which I read the Wanted, the short Wanted series, but I did not realize that until I saw this page come up for sale, that he was an artist in it. Um, and so I like pages from things that have something about them that is a little unique or special, even if it's just sort of a process thing rather than being about the art itself. And in this case, Dick Giordano did two full pages and then like a half page or maybe a couple of half pages for a flashback scene in Wanted, where I think they wanted to have it be a little bit more of a classic look. I assume so. They brought him
Hmm.
in to do the pages, um, and so that's all he did for, I think it's 6 issues. I think this is the last issue. So those were his only contributions to it. I also love architecture in comic art, so having a bunch of buildings in it is not doesn't hurt either for me. But then also, I love what he did, leaving a portion of that center panel uninked, because if you look at the published page, that's where the sort of the he used that to show the transition from, and spoiler alert if you haven't read the books, um the transition from a world with heroes to a world without heroes. um and so I just thought it was a very cool, unique way of doing that I hadn't seen before.
Oh, that is cool. It's a lot of great artwork from J.G. Jones in that run, right? But I had no idea Giordano did anything for it either. But that is a nice touch. He inked this too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, as far as I know, he's credited both as the penciler and the inker for these pages. Yeah.
Very,
And
very cool.
if I can ever find the second page that he is responsible for, or the half pages, although those are probably hard to find, um, I would happily buy it as well.
So there you go. Anybody who may have that or have a lead on that, you can shoot Brian an email through his CAF Gallery. I did not. I did not. God loves comics. Moving right along. Tell me about this one. Now, I don't think when I looked through your CAF gallery, you had a lot of like splash page kind of artwork. So, what was the reason behind this purchase?
So this was a convention purchase.
Mm,
This was just something I found, while going through some art. And I think it's Pazarin, right?
yeah,
Who
Fernando
is
Passerin.
the yeah. I like his artwork in general. And so owning a splash page from anything from him is great in my opinion. But as I was looking through this box of art, they had basically the whole issue, minus any pages that they might have already sold, but it looked like most of it. And all of it was done inked over blue line, except this page. It's the final page of the book. And um, in all other cases, Pazarin, his I think his name was just printed on the page, like it often happens, um, rather than signed. And I took a really close look at it, and it's not that to say that I won't ever buy blue line artwork, but this was priced as if it were blue line artwork, like the rest of the book. And so it was very inexpensive, and I hadn't had one of his pieces like on my list, but I recognized his name. Of course, I really liked the artwork. And I'd read the book, and it just happens to be a first appearance page for this villain. He's a minor villain that doesn't stick around very long, so I don't think that's important. I just really liked the artwork, and at the price that it was at, it was something that I just really couldn't pass up. And I included it in here simply because For anybody that might watch this later or is watching it now, who looks at the thousands of dollars pages that people often will purchase and post about and that kind of thing, I feel like there's plenty of really excellent art that can be had, and I can just say this was less than $200 for a published splash page from a great artist. And I even mentioned to the dealer at the time, I said, I don't think this is Blue Line. Is this priced correctly? And he said, no, whatever, it's already priced. It's out there. So whatever it's priced is what you pay. And I said, okay, I'll take it. So
Now, you're not supposed to say that, Brian. Don't give them any pointers that they might have underpriced something on the table.
I try to be probably too honest
Yeah,
sometimes in my
trust me, when Mike Berkey prices something wrong on the dueling dealers, nobody's going to say a word to him about it. So yes, let it happen. But that's so it wasn't something you were picking up direct from the penciler or Cam Smith, right? You were buying it from a dealer.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it was a smaller con. I don't even remember the dealer's name. They had a few boxes out of stuff, and I was just going through it. So, yeah.
Cool. Well, very good pickup.
Yeah.
Now, let's see. Next piece. This is Eddie Barrows, right? Yeah, Eddie Barrows and your Ferraria, or I'm probably butchering that, but this is from Task Force Z, and I have to tell you, yeah, I love the sound effect lettering. I mean, that's using that as the panel shapes and everything is just so. I don't mind. You can look at it and say it's over the top, but it's freaking awesome.
That is exactly what drew me to it. And that was this was actually a Comic Art Live purchase, this last Comic Art Live.
Oh, sweet.
Um and yeah, and I already had art from the duo, from the duo of artists, Barrows and Ferreria.
Hmm.
Again, I'm probably butchering the last name as well. But and so I already knew I liked their art, and I saw this, and I'm a sucker for unique panels, especially using words or letters, as panels, that kind of thing. I don't know if they're on my CAF yet, but I have one or two other representations, although less, little less interesting in my opinion than this one.
Hmm.
Um, and so when I saw this, I could there was no way that I could walk away from it. Now, Task Force Z is a really weird series. It's if you haven't read it, it's essentially, DC Universe. They come up with a way to bring back villains as zombies and create Task Force Z to do, undercover black ops work. Or hey, we'll turn off the thing that allows you to be a zombie and you'll just go back to being dead. And so, but yeah, there's in this, scene, you've got Red Hood, you've got being clocked out by Grundy there in the bottom. Grundy in the
Hmm.
center panel is skulking in the background. You've got the man bat with his head that's just been crushed by Grundy laying off to one side. Um,
That's
and
awesome. The inking is
so
fantastic on it.
yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, literally everything that you said as we were pulling up this page is exactly what drew me to it. And again, I love unique pages, things that are just a little bit more unusual, harder to find, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
So,
Cool. Well, now we're going to look at something completely different, and that is a
yes,
piece of strip art.
yeah. Um, so when I was trying to compile this list, I was, rather than doing something that, like, oh, my favorite 18 pieces, or the objectively the best pieces that I have, that kind of thing. I wanted to do more stuff that I could talk about.
Hmm.
That's what this is for. So this is a strip by a completely unknown artist named Walter Goddard. Um, and I say unknown because, as far as I've been able to find, this is unpublished. And I think I probably own all of his surviving artwork, which amounts to around 15 strips of this style, some of them unfinished, and then a handful of like single panel strips. Um, and a seller on eBay was selling them individually, uh, or at least had broken them up in some way. I can't remember exactly how. Uh, and I, while the book that we talked about at the very beginning was the very first comic book that I ever read, I did read newspaper comics, strip comics, like of course Peanuts, that kind of thing when I was a kid before that. And I've always loved strip art just as much, or, maybe not just as much, but I love it. I love it as well as I love comic art, comic book art. Um, and these looked good enough to have been published to me. I reached out to the eBay seller. He didn't have a lot of information on the artist, just enough to sort of figure out who he was and whatnot. And there's a little bit of writing on them where you can figure out, who was where, when was he. I basically did research on him to figure out, is did he ever work as an artist? And as far as I can tell, he never did. But he was talented, and I wanted to, put some of his art on here because, again, I think that it's a shame that he never really had a career as an artist, and that until I get these on CAF, which they are not on CAF yet, I'm really the only person looking at them. Um, and I did contact. Are you familiar with what's his name? Alan Holtz.
I don't believe so.
So Alan Holtz is a comic strip historian who runs a website called The Stripper's Guide. It's a blog that he's been running for many, many years, and it's great. If you aren't aware of it, you should check it out. But he probably knows more about newspaper comic strip art and artists than anyone else that I've ever heard of. And so I emailed him about Walter Goddard, and then he said he didn't have any info on him in his records. So probably, again, probably not published, or if it was published, it was probably in a local paper that would be very difficult to sort of find today. These were likely done in the 1930s, and I can say that Walter Goddard lived in Chicago. He went to war during World War II, and then came back to the States and bought a farm sort of in southern Illinois, and then was basically there for the rest of his life. So as far as I know, never managed to make it as a comic artist.
Understood. Well, I found the link to the what used to be the Stripper's Guide. Now it's over at comicstriphistory.com. So
Yeah.
uh, Matt says Alan wrote the Encyclopedia of American Newspaper Comics. Interesting. I'll have to check it out. Maybe we can have him on the show sometime. Might be a little good change of pace around here.
Yeah.
All right. So tell me about this one. Where did you get it? Why did you get it?
Why? So I have 5 pages, or six pages from this manga, um, and I spotted it. So I bought this through basically a service that allows you to buy stuff through from like Japanese auction websites. Um, and I saw that this was being sold, and I recognized the artist's name, Jiro Kawata. Um, he is the same artist that did. Are you familiar with? If I said Bat manga, would you know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, he's the same. He's the same artist.
Oh,
as
cool.
did Manga. This was 1991, so it was pretty not. He died in 2020, but it was pretty late in his career in 91. I think his last work in the field was like 1994 or so. And this, in particular, was a manga version of what's called the Book of Five Rings, which was a was written by someone named Miyamoto Musashi. I'm probably butchering that pronunciation. And he was a sword martial artist, like master in the 1600s, and he wrote this book, which detailed him not only about the martial art but also how he learned and that kind of thing. And the section of this manga that I own is actually, I bought it in part because I recognize the artist, but also because I recognize the legend sort of that it goes through, where it talks about Musashi fighting another sword master named Bokuden. And Bokuden beat him fighting with nothing but like a couple of pot lids in the story. Um, and so if you go through the pages in CAF, you can, even if you don't, I do have the translations for all the pages in CAF as well in the description. But if you go through, you can see in the art that he's basically defending himself with these pot lids. But that, I was a history major in college, and I recognized that story from a class that I had taken, and I've seen that scene represented in artwork, classic artwork from Japan, more than once. And so, even though I'm not a big manga reader or manga collector, I had enough of a connection to this to pick it up. So
Cool. Well, I'll throw a link in the chat to the gallery room in your CAF gallery so people can see the six pieces you got. Oh, they're nice. Very nice.
yeah, the I love the sort of the ink wash, the lighter areas of ink wash, and then the sort of the loose sort of city in the background where you can see the temple and that kind of thing. And then there's another page with a samurai up on a horse that is a really cool little uh piece of art. um yeah.
Yeah, no, I do. I really enjoy it. I think it's very well done.
Yeah.
Like I say here,
And if you read the text, it's funny. The kids that are in there are basically making fun of him through the whole thing, because the reason I say legend is because Bokuden and Musashi did not live during the same period of time. They weren't alive at the same time to be able to fight each other. And so this story is in the book, but it's considered more of a like a fable or a legend because of that,
hmm
obviously. And the kids are basically saying that. They're basically saying, "What are you talking about? He wasn't alive when you were alive, and you must have been hallucinating," and that kind of thing. So
it's a comic. You can take anything out of context that you want. All right, now this next piece. I don't know. You got to tell me why and on what material was this artwork done?
so after this one, I promise the art gets a little bit more normal, because I had a sequence toward the beginning of this that I wanted to have some random stuff. Uh so Tad Stones is the artist who I believe originally created the Darkwing Duck character for uh DuckTales, which is the cartoon that it appeared in before there was a full-blown Darkwing Duck cartoon. Um I was a little bit older, when Darkwing Duck came through, so it wasn't one that I watched a lot of.
hmm
Uh, but I was walking through the artists area at DragonCon, and I saw a table with a man behind the table, and around him was nothing but, he had no posters up, he had no sign, or anything like that. And he had napkins, like, just out in front of him, just napkins. And he had a pen and he was just drawing on these napkins, and he looked very unhappy. And so I went over and I started talking to him, learned who he was, and he said, "Do you want one of my napkin drawings?" And I said, "Sure." And he said, "Yeah, I'm mostly just doing these because I'm giving these out for free because I left my bag with all my art in it in the Uber that I took from the airport, and the Uber driver drove away with it still in his car."
Oh no.
And so I have nothing. I have nothing. And I don't want to be sitting here at this table or sitting in my room just bored and sulking. So I am out here drawing on napkins, so that people will come and talk to me.
And it worked.
and and it worked. And we had a good conversation. Um, and it turns out that the Uber driver was a very nice and honest person. And later that evening, I guess realized that there was a bag still in his car, and brought it to the hotel. And he got his stuff later that night. He missed out on the first day of sales, basically. But I came back, I went back by his table the next day, and he had everything set out and all that stuff. And I was like, "Oh," he told me the story of how he got back, and I was very happy with him. But he was in a much better mood the second day.
We didn't have to draw on napkins anymore.
And yeah, and the thing that I asked him, I was like, "There's a million artists around here. You don't think that there's somebody that would donate? The hotel probably has printer paper,
They
like
have
that they
something you can
would
draw on.
probably give you."
That was his protest.
Yeah. And I saved it, and I still have it, because not because I think it's worth anything, but because I think it's just a really funny story.
Hmm.
So
That's the first for me.
yeah,
Now, the thing, this is pretty nice.
yeah. Um, so I love monsters. Um, whether that be monsters in art in particular, but I like monsters in books and other media, movies, whatever. Uh, and so the thing is, obviously a classic sort of sci-fi horror movie. But I saw this come up on Heritage, and I didn't recognize the artist, and it looked like a comic book page to me, but it actually turns out that it's an art book page. So in 2017, they did an art book for the thing, and they had tons of art. I mean, this thing is huge. It's like 500 or 600 pages long. It's like a coffee table book in size, so it's this extremely big, heavy book. Um, and this is a page out of it. And not all of them are paneled, that look like a comic book page, but this one obviously is. And I thought that it was just a really excellent piece of art. And yeah, it's the ink on it is so thick that it's like heavier than a normal piece of paper, like a normal piece of Bristol, you know.
Well, it looks like there's a whole lot of ink on it, which is cool.
Yeah. Um yeah, the words, the thing down at the bottom, they're actually it's like he inked around it, so it's not like pasted on later, or or whatever, which is kind of nice. A lot of times lettering is not drawn in, like that.
Hmm.
Um and then in the book, basically the only difference between the published image and this is that they added sort of a red effect to the flare, and so the rest of it is lit kind of in a red color, you know. But
Yeah, there's not a lot of work on CAF by Chris either, but very interesting style.
yeah, it was
Jeff Wedding, ink so thick you could smack snowballs with it. Okay, all right.
Yeah. It's ink so
Uh,
thick that the
wow.
page curls, like
Right.
when if you can't really set it flat, it wants to bend in on itself. There's so much that was applied to it.
There you go. Matt Bulmer said that picked up a page from that art book by Chris DeBarry. It just looks like a sketch, though. This is really cool. So, well, it's so. What was the book again that it was from? I guess I'm not. I must have missed that.
I think it's just called The Thing Art Book,
Huh.
or something like that. It was
You have it listed as like page
published in
305. It must have been a rather big art book.
it's huge. It's I think it's at least over 400 pages, if not more.
Oh wow.
Um, I bought a copy after I got this piece of art because I wanted to see the rest of it. And I don't know if anybody else has this thing, but I try to own a copy of everything that I have a piece of art from. Do you find that to be a fairly normal thing for people to do, or is that just me?
Uh, no, well, I don't know. Normal, abnormal. No, what, how do we define that in this hobby? But I don't know. Sure. At least I think most people have at least read the book. Maybe they don't own it any longer that they have art from. At least I'd like to think so. And if you pick up something that uh, is of interest, sure. I think in one way or another, you at least want to go read the book that it's from, whether you own it or not.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a if you can find a copy, it's out of print, but if you can find a copy and you're a fan of the thing, it's worth having. It's good.
Well, very cool. Yeah, I did Google it, but yeah, I think it looks like it's kind of hard to pick one up. All right, now so you're spanning all genres here, Brian. We go from horror to Western, classic Western. It's an end page too, which is really nice.
It is, yeah. Again, the thing I tried to go for here was stuff that I could talk about. And I believe when I watched the interview with your last collector guest, who I believe he might have said something to the effect of, I'm not one of those people who goes out and, just finds stuff at a garage sale or at a thrift store or, just randomly out in the wild, or gets gifted something for free. I can't remember exactly how he put it. Um, but that made me think of this, which was a fairly recent encounter. I was at my local comic shop and I was talking about talking about original art with some of the people that were there. Um, and because I figured, hey, it's a comic shop, maybe there will be somebody else here who's interested. But turns out that there was a gentleman there who was not actually very interested in original art, or at least not anymore. But he said, "Hey, I have some original art from various things. It's kind of all over the place." He described it as kind of weird stuff, Um, but would you be interested in taking a look and maybe buying some of it from me if I brought it in? Um, and I said, yeah, I mean, I'd love to at least see it because he couldn't tell me right then what it was from, you know. Um, and so I gave him my number. He texted me some images later, and I purchased three things from him, including this page. And when I was a kid, I did read some of the classic Western comic books. I liked them and all that, but it was mostly just, again, the price was very low. I gave him sort of what I thought was a fair breakdown of what I thought the pieces might go for if he were to try to sell them online. But I said what they're worth. I gave him an offer where I said these are what it's worth to me, which was less, than that.
Hmm.
Um, if you want to sell them to me, I'd be happy to pay this, but I think you could get more. And he said, nope, that's fine. They're just sitting in my house, collecting dust. And he sold me this, and he sold me two other things that I have on CAF: a Heathcliff Sunday strip and a Yogi Bear Sunday strip, uh, as well. So.
Cool. Well, once again, you're trying to talk yourself out of somebody selling you something by you giving them too much information. But at least the gentleman was happy to have the artwork go to you. I mean, the Heathcliff Sunday is pretty nice as well, by Gately. That's
Yeah.
that's a Yogi Bear piece as well. Huh.
Yeah. Well,
Thank
and part of the reason though, in addition to just wanting to be honest, part of the reason I really wanted to be honest was because he said that he probably has other stuff that he just hasn't found yet. And I
And now he
wanted to
has your
leave the
number.
door open exactly for
No, then yeah, that was wise. Well, it's cool. No, it's a very nice piece of art. Kelly, Kelly's I forget what year this was. It's late 50s, I think,
fi-
but yeah, Keller was pretty
58.
prolific. 58. Okay.
Yeah.
Next up, a piece by Matt Hebb, and I can't say I think we've ever mentioned Matt's name on the channel.
Yeah. um this is an eBay find. Uh so this is actually a not a published piece either. It is a was described as a test page or a pitch page for a story to Marvel. That Marvel actually greenlit the project, but then Matt got sick. Um, I don't know exactly how, but he had some sort of serious illness and couldn't complete the project, so it was never published. But I saw it, and I'm as maybe people have been able to tell as we go through this, I'm not the biggest buyer of Marvel art. I do like Marvel stories. I read Marvel books. I don't know why. For some reason, my collection has just been more focused in the either DC or indie, comic area or newspaper comic area kind of thing. So
Hmm.
don't have that many pieces of Marvel art, but this is one of them, and I just again I just love the whole scene. Like it's just makes me laugh. So
It is very nice
um
too.
for context, actually, if you want to, you can go to Matt Hebb's website, and he has what I assume is the full series of pitch pages from this sort of like series of images, and so you can see where Spider-Man encounters Rhino, and then Rhino runs at him, and you get this scene, and then there's a little bit more after it too. Um, I'm glad this page was for sale because it's my favorite of the bunch. But and I did email Matt about the other pages to see if they were available at all because again, I've found that works. but but unfortunately, he hasn't gotten back to me about it. So maybe he doesn't have them anymore, or maybe he wants to keep them, or maybe he just who knows. I don't feel badly about it either way. So
Oh, that's right. Jeff Wedding. I forgot about the Hebb art. You're totally right. No, all right. I actually have to stand corrected. Jeff Wedding, yeah. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for the reminder. Um, no, well, again, you're picking up, this, as an unpublished piece. Hey, I own a few myself. Now this
so
next
what
one, I didn't, I have to show this one. I didn't realize who the artist was when I saw this. And maybe, but the more I've looked at it, you could tell from the style that Cassidy was behind this one. But at first I was looking at it and I'm like, gosh, I can't, it's the character and whatnot, and you don't know what it's about. But how did you come across this one?
Uh, so as I've said, I love monsters, and Kirby monsters are classics.
Hmm.
But this is something I bought directly from Albert Moy, from his website. Um, and it was in so after this was again a fairly recent purchase. After I learned, about Cassaday's passing, his art had been on my want list forever. Again, since I knew that it was possible to get artwork, I original art from comics. I loved Planetary, still love Planetary, and love other things that he's been involved with. Um, and so I knew sort of after he passed that, if I wanted a piece of something good, from him that I could afford, that it might not be a bad idea to reach out about it, because I was fully aware of Albert's website, of the available Cassaday art that he had. Um, but you know how it is, if somebody passes away when you don't expect them to, you worry. At least for me, I don't buy as an investment. It's just I was really afraid that his artwork might never be reachable for me if I waited. Uh, so I looked through some of the pieces that I had bookmarked before. This was one of them, and I decided that I would buy it, and I'm really very very happy with it. And I in my gallery I actually have the published image as well as images of where this character originally appeared in Kirby's work. Um, so if anybody's interested in that.
Well, it's cool. I mean, have a good example from them in your collection. But you do have a planetary page and even a Just Imagine page as well by Cassaday and Stan Lee. So that worked out.
Yeah, yeah. I sort of picked them all up at the same time. This was obviously the biggest of the three, and is the planetary page is great, and I love the face in the first panel of it. That was the main reason that I bought it, was because it was Cassaday's work. To me, I've always been really impressed with the way he does faces. Um, and so that was a piece that I picked up because it was, again, affordable, and because I wanted a piece of planetary. Um, but this cover was more of a, just, I'd picked it out before, and figured, you have, I don't know, again, I don't know if this is just me, but I see so much art that I love that maybe one day I'll be able to get, so I bookmark it, and most of it by the time I get back to it is gone. But every once in a while, some of it will still be there when I'm ready to purchase.
Hmm.
So,
Well, congrats on that and the other ones. I've owned a few Cassaday pages, in the past, but no, I've always loved his work, and man, no, this is a unique one. I don't think you'll ever find another one.
no.
This Cassaday's Kitty Pryde is the best. I would have to say that's true. He drew he drew her very, very well. Now, now this is I'd say, did you buy this one for the architecture or the last panel? Because you mentioned liking architecture earlier, and there's a lot of it in this one.
There is. So I bought this. The architecture was definitely part of it. Um, Also, No Man's Land, Batman No Man's Land remains my favorite Batman story uh, ever. It's yet to be topped, for me personally. I understand that probably that may not be the case for a lot of people, but I loved all of No Man's Land. And this was an early CAF purchase for me. I bought it from somebody on CAF, um, before I was really participating much. I don't even know if I had much in my gallery, if anything, at the time.
Hmm.
Um, and I was more of a lurker. And I saw this come up, and it was one of the very few pages I'd seen come up for sale from No Man's Land #1. And it's from part of the book that I really love the most, where uh, it's sort of like going through, what's her name? Barbara Gordon's sort of going through all of a monologue of, like, the different parts of the city that the city's been split into. Which villains or heroes or the GCPD, which areas they control. Um, and I've always loved that sequence. I don't know why, um, but yeah. And then I think someone commented on my that the it kind of almost looks Magnolia-ish, especially that last panel. And I didn't see that before, but then once somebody said it, I was like, yeah, it does kind of.
Well, I always love a good four-panel layout, so I like this page. It's Malieve and Foucher, but no, that's cool. So an early pickup from the site.
Yep. Yep. It was funnily enough, the person who sold me this had one other Malieve page that they weren't selling, that was from Superman versus Predator. Uh, that page then just in 2024 went up on Heritage Auctions, and I ended up buying it. I ended up winning it in the auction. So these two pages are now with the same owner again, just a completely different owner.
Cool. Well, now this next piece is by somebody who we have featured on several CAF updates previously, and that is Mike Perkins, who's been doing a lot of amazing work. But this is from issue 1 of Swamp Thing, right?
Yep. Yep. His the most recent, run of Swamp Thing. Um not a I'm not like necessarily into like birth pages or anything like that, but I think this is I don't think this is the first page that this character appears on, but it's like the first, big like image of the character, which is the Pale Wanderer, uh another sort of not an avatar like the Swamp Thing is, but sort of an avatar, I think. Um and it's a really so I love Perkins's art in general. He's another one of the ones that does uh, heavy inking, on pages. I own a few pages from him now, and his are another one where you set it flat on a table and it wants to curl because there's just the ink is so heavy on it. Um, but this page in particular, I loved because it's a combination of horror, really well rendered horror with really corny humor. Because if you look at the published page, the sheriff in the first two panels doesn't see what it is that's coming around the boulder, and he says, "Come out with your hands up or hands raised" or something like that. And the Pale Wanderer, if you look at the art, is holding up the two hands of his most recent victim.
Wow.
um,
Uh, it is pretty gruesome, but in a good way. As Trump, I love the shadow on the behind him and everything on that in the splash. Carl Troy, you didn't miss
yeah,
anything. Um, no, this is slick, and you get it from the first issue too. I mean, that's always a good thing.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, we
Always a
featured.
good thing. And sorry, go
I
ahead.
was gonna say we featured a lot of Perkins Swamp Thing art, on the CAF update, just because there was just so many amazing pieces that came out of that. I mean, he's been slaying it for sure. But congrats on that one too.
Thank you. Yeah,
Uh,
I love it.
All right, now next up, let me see here. Oh, Kieran Dwyer, and it's a
Yeah,
page from Superman Deadly Legacy.
yeah. So, are you familiar with this book?
I am not.
Okay. So Superman Deadly Legacy was a book published in 1996, with a partnership between DC Comics, the U.S. government, and UNICEF, uh, to create this book. Actually, it's the second book, because there was like a Wonder Woman Superman one, that came, I think, before this one, um, that was published in order to hand out for free, in areas that were uh, around like Croatia and Bosnia and that kind of thing, where where landmines had been placed, and there were these unexploded minefields, and children were, unfortunately wandering into them and that kind of thing. And so it was to educate, kids um, about these minefields. I don't actually know how effective it was. I don't even know if there was any studies done to know how effective it was. But it was published in English, Serbian, and Croatian. And there's overlays. If you look close, you can, well, in the zoomed in image, you can see some of it. But it's all the speech, all the text are on overlays, full page overlays that go over the whole thing, and replace all the speech bubbles with the different languages that it was published in, and they came with the page. And I thought that was so cool. I just thought that was a really unique thing.
Yeah, I can say that I've never seen, that before. I mean, a lot of times with foreign books, they'll just leave the word bubbles empty, right? Because they know they're going to translate it, and so the balloons are there, but nothing's written in them. I've never seen it where they've actually done it like that, but that is cool, very unique. Honestly, a first for me.
And I'm not the only owner of pages from this on CAF. After I got it and I put it on the site, I did a search for others to see if anybody else did, and I think there was at least one other person uh, that owns like a double page spread from the book. There might even be other pages, but that's the one I remember.
Hmm. Well, very cool. I've learned something new today. Let's see. We have four other pieces, and this one, who was the artist on this one? One, for Ferreira. I always butcher that guy's name too. But this is from Green Arrow 37, and it's an interior page, a first page to a book.
Yeah, yeah. It's I so the next like couple of artists or next few artists are ones that I think plenty of people are obviously aware of Juan Ferreira's work, and there are many fans of it out there. It's just, luckily for me, his artwork is still very affordable, but I don't understand why. um, I don't know if it's the people aren't, or maybe collectors are turned off by the color aspect of it, or it's just very different. But
Hmm.
I look at a page like this and I love it, like immediately love it. And it was one of those that sat in sort of my want list for quite a while. And I was very happy that no one else picked it up before I was able to. Um, and in my opinion, and this might just be me speaking with some, because I like it so much, but I think this image could be a cover, in my opinion. So
Well, when I first saw it, I thought it must be, but no, it's not. There's quite a bit of Juan's work on the website though. But yeah,
uh,
yours is one of the more colorful ones. He does a lot of ink wash work.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yep. And he's definitely well known. Like I said, he's just to me, when I first found his work, I was just very surprised at how affordable it was. And which is not a bad thing. It's just uh, I have a I often assume that when I come by artists who sort of late in the game, not late in the game in terms of they're just already really well known. I often tend to think that, like, oh, I'm not going to be able to get something from them. But then when I went to the rep site and saw all of the available artwork and the prices on it, I was like, oh, like, okay, not only am I going to be able to afford something, but if I wait a little bit, I can afford something quite nice,
hmm.
like a really, really nice piece. So yeah. Um,
Well, it was worth the
I also
wait on
think
that one.
yeah, and I also think the published page looks great too. I think that, having seen a lot of his work now, I think that a lot of times the colorists are doing a great job complementing his work with the digital color rather than sort of covering over the color that he includes, which I could see maybe happening, but it's really, I think, quite nice in the published page as well. So
Well, I agree. Now, this next artist I wasn't familiar with, but I believe they're at least Marquet from Splash Page sells some of their artwork.
yeah, um, and I'm not sure whether he's still. So I think when I last looked, he also had art with another rep in Europe. But I don't
Okay,
know if there's maybe just like a Europe US split, of some kind. I don't know.
sure.
So, um, but yeah, Veil was a short series published at Dark Horse. And I read the series before I saw the art was available, and this was another one where I was just like, wait, this is the cover to the number one of Veil, and always loved this art, since I saw it. And it's something that I can afford, and that's, again, just surprising. Was surprising for me. Um, all pencil, no ink, but the pencils are so heavy, in it. Um, it's also smaller than your average cover. I think it's only like 11 by 14. Um, but it's his style is like this through this entire series, and he does this style sort of similarly in some other books that he's worked on, but it's not quite this level of blocky in like a lot of it. But I don't know what it is. I love this style. Um, and I'm very confident that there's more art from Tony Fazula in my future.
Yeah, I just put the link over to Splash Page, and yeah, it's really very unique. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
You're right, Marcus. It would have made a good Thursday pick. How did I not see it? Um, but no, no, this is cool, Brian. Again, it's always good to learn about new artists. I mean, I've been on Marquet's site many times, and I have not gone to this artist page. So, I mean, that just shows you it's easy to overlook stuff when there's so much artwork out there.
Well, and I think also this might just be speaking from my perspective, but like the Green Lantern page that we talked about earlier, that was
Hmm.
something. To find that page at a good price, I had to dig through, boxes of of art to come across, and I think being on a stricter budget almost motivates you to find maybe the artists who are excellent but less, pricey, or find the newer artists or the indie artists who have, a lot of really excellent work that is just not quite broken through into the rest of the into to increase the price. I mean, obviously a lot of people know about some of these artists, but like it hasn't reflected so far in their prices to the point where they're out of reach for someone like myself who
Hmm.
does all this on a budget. So
No, I get it. I mean, that's why we the IC3 con in New Haven in a few short weekends. I mean, we're uh, the idea of being able to work with artists who aren't familiar to the broader collecting audience is very appealing to us, and I think there's a lot of interesting things that we're going to be able to do. Working with indie creators, and that's why even the last show we had in November on Comic Art Live, we had the indie hall, and we're actually going to go full in on that this next time around too, because there's just so much great artwork out there that it's hard to discover, right? I mean, that's and with indie creators in particular, the one thing I've learned over the last few months is, if they have a website, they're typically trying to promote their comics more than the artwork that they have. So a lot of them don't show their artwork for sale. Even if you like their artwork, it's a little bit harder to find. So um, yeah, hopefully we'll help kind of move that along and change things a little bit.
yeah.
Uh, let's see here. The next artist I'm not familiar with, so you're gonna have to help me on this one. Alex Veed.
I'll be honest, I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce his last name. It's Vere or Vide.
That, yeah, that makes
He's
more
from
sense.
Spain.
Yeah.
Yeah. Young artist from Spain. This is I was aware of him before I saw this, but uh this is another Comic Art Live purchase. So thank you for having that. Um and it's the cover to his second self-published book called Subterranea, where essentially it's a uh, horror adventure story where a person is trying to save their cat, which maybe doesn't sound very exciting, but I hope from the cover it may, maybe it actually is more exciting than it sounds on premise. um, and his first book actually is called his first self-published book was called Yucatan 1512, and that was actually picked up by Dark Horse and is going to be published in May. So here's hoping that this one also gets published.
Right. No, I'm just
um,
reading up about them right now. That, yeah, I like their work a lot. Wow.
yeah, he has a huge following on social media, like Instagram, that kind of thing. But there's only a handful of pieces on CAF from him. This went up for sale from obviously another CAF member who he said he had a couple of pieces from Alex Vede, and he was keeping his favorite and then selling this, and I think it was on day two. I think it was on Sunday that I noticed it. I don't know if I can't remember whether it was one that he put up on Sunday or whether it had made it through Saturday without anybody picking it up. But as soon as I saw it, I messaged him about it. If you look through Alex's Instagram, his artwork is very sketchy, scratchy, kind of like this, very loose. But one thing I really like about it is that I don't think I've ever looked at a piece of his art and questioned what it is that's in the image. Even the cat on the shoulder of the character in this this is a full, I think it's A3. It's basically the size of an 11 by 17, roughly, uh, page of comic art. So this cat is tiny, but as soon as I saw the cover, I was like, "That's a cat." Like there's no question as to what it was. So
No, I guess it could be a Pokemon, Marcus, but it's not. It's a cat. Um, yeah, I was trying to see if he had a personal website. I can't find anything. Lots of articles about him, and you're right. His Instagram has a couple 100,000 followers, but yeah, no, I like his work a lot. If he
yeah,
colors his own stuff too,
he
he's really good.
he digitally colors all his own stuff as well. So
Huh.
um, he as far as I've been able to find, he has an online store, but it only exists when he's selling something. So after he's not selling something, it just vanishes from the
Oh, that's what
internet.
I clicked off of that on X, and it said that the store wasn't found over on his big cartel. So I guess you just have to go at the right moment, huh?
I guess. And I'd never seen any of his work for sale before, and so I just like I said, I happened upon it on Comic
On
Art
Comic
Live,
Art Live, of all
and there was
places. Well, that's awesome. Yeah, you did have a question from Antoine before we move on to the last piece. He said, "I see a dot pattern here. How is that done? I mean, it looks fairly consistent, but is it done by hand?"
it is done by hand, but I think he probably used a multi. It looks so evenly spaced to me. Obviously, I haven't asked him, but but if I was looking at it, I would think that he used something like that had very tiny tongs or something, to sort of make that pattern. But it is ink. It's not. There's no zip tone or anything like that on it. So yeah.
Got it. All right, now we are to the last piece of the evening, Brian, and it's a
Yes.
strip. But tell me about this,
It
because
is.
yeah, it's strangely enough, it looks like you.
It is me. um, Danielle Corsetto is one of my favorite like cartoonist comic strip artists. She for many many years did a comic called Girls with Slingshots, which is a web comic. But she it was all hand done and then scanned in, so it wasn't digitally done. So there were physical strips for every single strip that I feel like she made it to this. It wrapped up after about 10 years, and I think there were somewhere between like 1,800 and 2,000 strips in that time.
Hmm.
Um, and toward the end of the series, this would have been 2014. Um, she put up a Kickstarter so that she could do a 10-year anniversary like tour of the U.S. To go to books, like signings and things like that. Because uh, they're originally these strips were published. They were released online, obviously for free, um, and then she would. They were published into like 10 volumes, but then collected after all the years after it was complete into a huge, 2-volume compendium uh, sort of thing. Anyway, put up a Kickstarter, uh, and the top level Kickstarter option that was a cameo in the comic, and then to be given the strips that the art from the strips, strip or strips, because she said she would guarantee that if you got that level, you would be in at least one, and if you were in more than one, then you would get all the art that you were in. Um, and so this is one of two that I appear in the series. I'm also in the one directly after this. Neither of them I have made it onto my CAF yet, but this was a this was a fun one for me. And Danielle is just about the nicest person that you'd ever want to meet. And I have a very extensive. I mean, I have a fairly large collection of her art, both from Girls with Slingshots and other projects that she's been in. But obviously, the strips that I appear in are special to me. So
Of course. Yeah, you have 4 pieces by Danielle in your calf. So I can throw a
yeah,
link on there too pretty
I have
soon.
I actually have far more than that. They just haven't made it onto the site. So
Brian. Well, trust me, we all suffer from that same, dilemma of having time to post artwork to our calf, right? Um, yeah, I have more than enough that I haven't been able to post myself. I haven't, at OAX, I picked up a few pieces and I haven't posted one yet. I've shown them here. It's much easier just to hold them up and show them off than it is to take the time to properly throw them on the scanner or use the app. Like I probably should just do that. Even if I can't get a proper scan for it, just use the app to get it posted up there and at least get started and then maybe replace them with a better scan one day. But no, again, I'd say 50% of the artists, right? We're all, I wouldn't say 100% new to me, but artists that we've not had the opportunity to talk about here on the channel before, Brian. I had a feeling because I checked out your CAF gallery before I asked you if you were free for an interview, and I knew we'd get a good selection of stuff.
yeah, I hope you don't mind. I know it's not all the most popular, stuff or whatever, but it's stuff that I really like. So
No, no, I totally enjoyed looking at all of it. And again, I've actually taken a lot of notes because there's a few of the artists that I might bookmark that one guy's Big Cartel just to see if it, and then go back to it like set a reminder in my calendar. Once a week, I'm going to go back there just to see if he has anything for sale. Because clearly, if a CAF member picks something up, it's gotta have an opportunity here or there.
yeah, I would assume so. Like I said, I've never been lucky enough to see his shop open, but luckily I'm, secondhand luck. So
Nothing wrong with that. I always say be the second person to buy something, but Brian, no, this was fun. I appreciate it, and I hope everybody else enjoyed getting to hang out with us this evening. But I guess maybe the next time I see you will be at IX in the fall, right? If you're definitely going.
Absolutely. I will be there for at least a couple of days, I'm sure. So, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I haven't talked with Patrick and Jeannie, but yeah, I'd like to be there for at least 2 or 3 days again. Yeah, again, the weekends are the best to go to that show, but yeah, I'll definitely see you then. All
Yeah.
right, everybody.
Definitely.
We
Awesome.
uh we learned a lot tonight, and as God Loves Comics says, he recognized Dick Giordano. So yeah, that's good. You gotta have one. Um, uh, who is this? Matt says, I love Jim Sutphin, but he only sells on Etsy. I'm not familiar with Jim Sutphin, but I'll make a note of that name and look later. All right, everybody. You guys have a wonderful evening. And what am I doing tomorrow night? I'll have Anthony on here. We'll be doing another art drop, and then uh, lots of other different shows planned on Wednesday nights coming up as well. So, Brian, again, thanks a lot. I sincerely appreciate it. Everybody else have a wonderful evening. We'll see you again soon.